Hi boys and girls, we're going to do a little reviewing about adding and subtracting decimals, and I know that you've been learning a lot through the week. So let's look at our first problem, and what I would suggest is to pause the video, try it out, and then come back to the video and we'll work it out together. So let's read it and then you can pause the video. Briseida is running the hurdles for the track team. The race times are measured in hundredths of seconds. Briseida's best time is 19 and 42 seconds. She needs to run in 18 and 87 seconds to win the race. If Briseida wins the race, how many seconds better will her new time be? So let's go ahead and pause that video. I want you to work that out and then come back. Great. Glad you had some time to work on that. So let's think about what's happening in this problem. So we know that Briseida, her best time is 19 and 42 seconds. But she needs to run 18 and 87 seconds to win. If she wins, how many seconds better will her time? So we want to know what the difference is between these two numbers, between her best time, her previous best time, and what she needs to do. We also know that when you're running track, the lower your time is, that means that's the fastest that you've been. So she would need to run a less amount of time. So let's take 19 and 42 seconds, 4200 seconds, and subtract 18 and 87 hundredths. Okay, so I can do this multiple ways, and you can also even use base 10 blocks. So we're going to subtract here, and let me change pen colors. Notice how I have the decimals lined up here, and that's so that my hundredths are together, my tenths are together, my ones, and then my tens. Okay? So I am going to take away 7/8 from 200ths, but I'm going to have to rename that one. So now I'm going to take one of those tenths and make it a hundredth. So now I have 12 hundredths. So 12 hundredths minus 7 hundredths. So if I'm thinking about this, I'm thinking 7 plus what would be 12. So I know 7 plus 7 would be 14. So now I know 7 plus 5, because it would have to be 2 less, would be 12. So now I need some more tenths. So I'm going to rename some ones here. And now I have 13 tenths. So 13 tenths minus 8 tenths. So I'm going to think of addition again. So I know 8 and 2 is 10, and then 3 more is 13, so that would be 5. 8 plus 5 would be 13. Okay, there's my decimal. So 8 ones minus 8 ones, I wouldn't have any left. Oh, and no 10. So let's see, how many seconds better will her new time be? So her new time, the difference between these two times is 55 hundredths seconds. And I'm going to label that. Oops. Let me fix that mistake there. Always great to label our work. Put our units on there. So another way that I would have thought about this problem is thinking even about a number line, because I'm finding the difference between these numbers. So what would that be to, well, let's just go to 1890. 18 and 90 hundredths. Well, that would just be 3 hundredths. So now what would it be to 19? There I'm adding a tenth. Oh, and then 19 to 19 and 42 hundredths. I'm adding 42. So 42 hundredths, 52 hundredths, and then 3 more hundredths would be 55 hundredths. So that's another way I could have thought about it. So my answer is 55 hundredths seconds. Great job on that one. So let's think about this next one. Dana bought 5 kilograms of meat to make burgers. She used 2 and 45 hundredths kilograms for the burgers. How much meat was left over? Why don't you pause the video here and see if you can solve this, and we'll come back together. Okay, great. Glad you're back with me. I'm going to think if I have 5 and I'm going to use up to make some burgers 2 and 45 kilograms. So let's see. Let's just do some estimating here. So if I have 5, let me get my pen here. If I have 5 and I use some of that meat, am I going to have less? Yes. So I'm going to have about 2. So I'm going to have about 3 kilograms. So I know I'm going to subtract more than this. So will I have more or less than 3? I'll have a little bit less, won't I? So that's going to kind of give us sort of an estimate there. So we can think about different ways to do this. So we're going to take 5, and I know I don't have any tenths or hundredths. And I'm going to subtract 2 and 45 hundredths. So if I write 5, that's with the zeros behind the decimal, that's still 5. It's still 5 wholes. So I can represent it that way. So I can solve it this way. And remember, that common mistake might be 5 minus 0, but it's not. I'm actually taking 5 away from that. So I'm going to have to rename that. So I need to get some tenths. And I actually have 50 tenths. So I'm going to take one of those. And now I have 49 tenths because I needed some hundredths here. So 10 hundredths minus 5 hundredths is 5. And now tenths, 9 tenths minus 4 tenths is 5 tenths. So I'm going to put my decimal here. And 4 ones minus 2 ones is 2. So I now have left over 2 and 55 kilograms. So let's look back at our estimate. We said that we were going to actually take away more than that, so I would have less than that. So that's about where I would expect that to be. Okay, great job on that one. So let's look at the next one. Okay, on the next two, we are actually using some data here from a chart, and we know here are some cities, and then we said the distance in miles. So all of these are some distances, and then ask us a question about that data. And then the next one is also a question about that data. So I do want you to try to solve both of those. Let's look at the questions. How many miles is it for a round trip to Memphis? So let's talk about what that would mean for a round trip. So let's have a little visual here. So let's say if I'm going from my house and I'm going to Walmart. Walmart's much bigger than my house, isn't it? Okay. All right, so I'm going from my house, and let's say that it takes 15 miles to get there. So I'm driving in my car, and it takes 15 miles to get there. But then I have to come back, so that means round trip. So 15 miles one way, and then I have to go back. So I'm going 15 miles there, and then I have to go 15 miles back. So what is that round trip? That's right, that's 30 miles. I have to go 15 miles there and 15 miles back. So I want you to be thinking about that as you solve that next problem. So let's erase that. And let's look at the next one. The next one asks, how much further is it to drive to Lexington than it is to drive to Knoxville? Okay, so it's telling you the distance to each one. So think about how much further is it to drive to Lexington than to Knoxville. So I might not use all the data that's in a chart when I'm solving problems. So you'll really need to think about what I do need to use when you're solving them. So go ahead and pause the video and check back, and we'll solve these together. Okay, great to have you back. So we talked about a round trip before, and we wanted to know how many miles is it for a round trip to Memphis. So if it takes, oh, let me get my pen. I thought I had it ready. 369 and 58 hundredths of a mile to get there, then it's going to take me the same amount back. So what would I be doing here? That's right, I'm going to add these two together. So I want to estimate here, and we're going to use our rounding skills here to estimate. And so let's round to the nearest whole number. And when I round to the nearest whole number, I'm going to be thinking about these ones here. So 369 and 58 hundredths is actually closer to 370 than 369. So this would round to 370. So if I'm adding these two together, 3, 6, 7, then that's about 740 miles. And that's my estimate. Is it going to be more than that or less than that? I know it's going to be a little bit less because this is, I rounded up. So this is a little bit less. So let's add these together. I'm going to go back to, well, I think I will stay with the red here so I can use that. Okay, I'm going to add my hundredths together. 8 hundredths and 8 hundredths is 16 hundredths. Tenths together. 5 and 5 is 10, and one more is 11. Put my decimal. Now I'm at the ones. 9 and 9, that's a double. 18 and one more is 19. Okay, now I'm going to add my tens. So 60 and 60 is 120. Plus 10 more, so that's 130. And then I'm going to add my hundreds. 300 and another 300 is 600, plus one more is 700. So 739 and 16 hundredths. And I want to make sure that I put my unit there. It's miles. And let's look back at our estimate. We had our estimate at 740 miles. And we knew that it was going to be a little bit less, but it's very close. So great job on that one. So now let's look at our final question. And remember, here we talked about how we probably would not use all of the data from our chart, and that's typical. We have to really think about what we might use with the question. So how much further is it to drive to Lexington? Let me get my pen ready. To Lexington than it is to drive to Knoxville. How much further is it to drive from Lexington? So I'm thinking that this is trying to find the difference between these two. So to drive to Lexington, oh gosh, if I'm going to compare these two right here, which one is more? I'm going to compare these two distances. It's much further to drive to Lexington, Kentucky, isn't it? Okay, so I'm going to find the difference between these numbers. So if I have 251 and 46 hundredths, and I subtract 83 and 47, and why didn't I do this? Why did I not do this? Well, because the reason that I'm doing that is that way I can subtract my ones from my ones, and my tens, and my tenths from my tenths, hundredths from hundredths. So this would not be correct. Okay, so we have to really think about what we're doing there. I'm going to change pen colors, that way you can kind of see it. And I need to take away 7 hundredths, and we're not going to fall in that pattern with that common mistake, are we? Because I know I'm going to take 7 hundredths away, so I'm going to rename this. And now I have 16 hundredths. So that is 9, because I know that 9 plus 7 would be 16. 10 plus 7 would be 17. So 1 less. Okay, and now I need some more tenths here. So I'm going to rename these, and now I have 13 tenths. And so that would be 9. I know that because 9 plus 4 is 13. So now I need my decimal. How do I know I need my decimal there? Well, if I look at my place value here, I know that this is tenths, and my decimal comes right before that, and I'm about to subtract my ones here. So I need some more ones here, so I'm going to rename my tens. Now I have 10 ones, so 10 minus 3 is 7, and let's see, I need some more 10, so I'm going to rename these hundreds. So now I have 14 tens. So I'm going to think about addition here to find the difference between 14 and 8. So I know 8 and 2 makes 10. So I need 4 more. Oh, that's 6, because 4 and 2 is 6. So 8 plus 6 would be 14, because I know 8 and 2 would make 10 and 4 more. So I know the difference between those. Okay, and then my 1 there. So because that math can be a little bit tricky when I'm subtracting, look at all that regrouping that I did. I want to prove my work here. And 167 and 99 hundredths, and I'm going to add 83 and 47 hundredths, and see if I get 251 and 46 hundredths. Let's see. Let's prove our math right. I'm going to change pen colors. Okay, 9 and 7 make 16, that's hundredths. 9 and 1 is 10, plus 4 more is 14. Oh, there's my decimal. 7 and 3 make 10, 1 more is 11. And now I'm adding my tens. 8 and 1 is 9. 9 plus 6, well, if it was 10 and 6, it would be 16, so I know that's 15. And then 2. Oh, yep, I did the math right, because these two match, right? So I proved my work. So what was the difference? How much further is it to drive to Lexington than it is to drive to Knoxville? So the difference between those two distances is 167 and 99 hundredths miles. Great job today, boys and girls, with adding and subtracting decimals review. Great work.